You are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my Foul Play February series. I'm Brooke Makenna, but today's video is about the American Horror Story inspired murder. Now, most of us have either watched or at least heard of American Horror Story and the pure craziness within the 8 seasons of the show, but did you know that there was an actual real-life murder that was inspired by this show? Because when I found out that there was, I knew I had to tell you guys what exactly happened. By the way, I am posting every single day this month. It's almost over, but if you've missed any, there will be a playlist linked down below for you to check out. And if you want to subscribe for more content like this, I would love you forever, and especially if you'd give this a thumbs up. But let's get back to the story. So it was August of 2016 in Adelaide, South Australia, where an 81-year-old man named Robert Footwell was murdered. He was stabbed 4 times in the neck and chest in his Craigmore home. Robert was said to be a proud and giving family guy, and that he would give to anyone in need. He was kind, gentle, and a wonderful grandfather, and it was said that he had never gotten in an argument in his life. He always tried to help anybody whenever he could, and he always tried to do the right thing as well. So who would want to kill this man, this 81-year-old elder? Well, an anonymous tip would lead them to what they believed to be his killer, and the news would shock everyone. This tip said that this killer was 19-year-old Brittany Jade Dwyer, and her age wasn't the baffling part. She was his granddaughter. Shortly after that, it was found that she may have had an accomplice, because 21-year-old Bernadette Burns had gone with Brittany to her grandfather's house, and there were text messages between the two, with Bernadette sending one to Brittany saying, "Just harden up and do it," but it wasn't specified what it necessarily was. But when they were both brought in for questioning, it was found that they had gone from Queensland to Adelaide, and their original plan was to just take his life savings that he kept in his backyard shed, and they were going to do whatever was necessary to get it. But then later on, they admitted to his murder. Brittany said she put on gloves and concealed a knife before going into her grandfather's house that day. She knocked on the door, and of course he let her in, and when she went inside, he began showing her family photos. But after that, as they were walking back to the front door for her to leave, she stabbed him 4 times. She then went into the kitchen and grabbed a token band-aid, placed it over his wound, and then went into the kitchen to do the dishes. Bernadette was waiting out in the car doing her makeup while also sending words of encouragement, if that's what you could call it, to Brittany through text message. Now, she said that she didn't mean for him to be harmed or killed, but she definitely knew that it was a possibility. They were then going to steal $111,000 that was supposedly his life savings, but they couldn't even find it anywhere, and they had already killed him, so it's not like they could ask him. So they left with just a little over $1,000. Then Brittany drove to her mother's house, where her mother had just gotten the news that her father had been murdered, and Brittany burst into tears in front of her. That's when her mother asked her if she would go to Adelaide with her to plan the funeral and do everything together, and Brittany agreed. She was going to attend the funeral and mourn the loss of the grandfather she had killed. At first, Brittany claimed that the reason she had done all this was because her grandfather had sexually assaulted her as a child, and everybody in the family said that this was a complete lie, that there was no way in the world this could be true. And eventually Brittany basically said that that was a lie, and her real motive was a TV show that was born on murder and gruesome subjects called American Horror Story, and this is what gave her the courage to do it. Bernadette was also in a self-destructive cycle after losing custody of her 4-year-old daughter. Both girls pled guilty in Robert's murder, and Brittany's mom said that she had watched her go from a bubbly, kind of carefree teenager to someone who loved death and gore and knives and blood and was obsessed with it. Brittany apparently had a best friend named Shelby Holmes who was into the same kind of stuff that she was. They would often frequent cemeteries together and do very strange things, is how her mother put it. But she also said that after they graduated, it got even worse, and it was like a completely different person that Brittany turned into, and now she was doing cocaine and ecstasy, things she had never even touched before. And then it was found that in April of 2016, Brittany had actually had an original plan to steal her grandfather's money, and this time, 4 months before the murder, she was going with Shelby. And there were messages sent between the two, with Shelby saying, "He said hey to me, OMG, he's lovely." To which Brittany responded, "He is very lovely. Don't get attached to him. He might have to die." They tried to rob him the next day and they failed, and that's why 4 months later she went back with Bernadette. Now, it's said that the day that he was murdered, Brittany was actually going to back out. She had texted Bernadette after her grandfather showed her family pictures and said she was pulling out, she couldn't do it. And with Bernadette's words of encouragement, she continued on, and after she began stabbing her grandfather, he was asking her why, and she didn't respond, only went and grabbed a band-aid, placed it over the wound like that would help anything, and handed him a cloth to put over it, while she went back in the kitchen to do the dishes as he bled to death. The court believed that Brittany had severe psychological issues and possible borderline personality disorder, and her own brother said to give her maximum penalty because she couldn't even come clean and confess to the family to what she had done. Brittany was eventually sentenced to life in prison with a non-parole period of 21 years, and Bernadette was sentenced to 13 years and 6 months for her part. Brittany said that if she could, she would take it all back, but she was also more preoccupied with the fact that her ex-best friend, Shelby, the original person she had just tried to rob her grandfather with, was denying the fact that they were ever in a relationship, and Brittany said that they were, and she was more, it seemed, preoccupied with that fact than the fact that she had murdered her own grandfather. Bernadette, on the other hand, said she regretted her role in this whole thing and was filled with guilt and sorrow for what she had done. The judge said this murder was brutal, callous, cold-blooded, and dispassionately planned, and that he wasn't sure that Brittany even had the capacity to feel empathy. But for the rest of the family, it was time to let the healing begin, and Brittany's mother wasn't sure that she would ever understand what truly happened, only that she had now lost her father and her daughter. They all say that it's a test upon everyone in the family to pick yourself up and get on with your life. But do you believe a show can be enough to influence someone to kill? I mean, I'm not sure that liking dark things or having an obsession with something that's a little strange is enough to say that someone is a killer or give that person that motive that, oh, they just like strange things, obviously that's why they did it. But I do think that her sudden turn in personality is very concerning, and yes, people can change, but a switch like that makes me wonder if something truly did happen in her life that maybe nobody knows about, that affected the way her brain processed things and possibly made her snap enough to think that killing her grandfather for money was a solution that she was willing to do and something she was willing to sacrifice. I do think that things that you watch as a child and a teen can greatly affect and impact your brain and the way you see the world, but I don't think it's enough to turn you into a killer. I think just like watching true crime videos, it affects you how you want it to affect you, and you can choose to be a good person or you can choose to go down a dark path that you will never come out of, or you may not. But one thing that I do want to say is if you are in a mentally dark state, I would say always stay away from the darker topics, because that just makes it even worse. And even if you think, oh, I'm fine, I'm stable enough, it's just more pressure on you and more darkness that you don't need. So maybe stay away for a while and catch your breath and then come back to it afterwards. But what I want to ask you is, do you think that Bernadette should have gotten a longer sentence for the text messages she sent? She was kind of the one who was saying, please do it, you gotta do it, harden up and do it, when she was about to opt out of the whole thing. And do you think that the money was the real motive? Because they didn't even ask him where it was beforehand. They didn't ask him to unlock the lockbox or unlock the shed or tell them exactly where it was. They could have went a horrible way and tortured him to get it, but instead they just killed him and then didn't find anything and left with basically nothing. Do you think that that was poor planning or just an excuse to the fact that she just wanted to kill her grandfather? I think that's all the questions that I have for you today. I hope that you like this kind of short true crime video. I just found the whole story insane, and anything that is inspired by a TV show or a TV show inspired by real life is just my kind of thing. It's so interesting to me, those dynamics, and yeah, make sure to give this a thumbs up if you did enjoy it. And we're almost done with Foul Play February, so make sure you're subscribed so you know when my content is coming next month. And don't ever forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay, bye.